welcome to a bonus episode of the Blooms and Barnacles podcast, which is usually all about Ulysses, but today is about Shakespeare and the cinema. We are reviewing for our bonus episode this month the recent Chloe Zhao film Hamnet, and we just want to thank you for joining us and supporting us here on Patreon. We are going to indulge ourselves this month and our taste for cinema. If you haven't seen Hamnet, it's out in theaters now. If you're listening in real time and you live in, I think, Ireland or the UK, it's probably out in the US still too. If you're joining us and you haven't seen the movie, we are going to talk pretty heavily about the plot of the movie and spoil everything. So if you do intend to watch the movie, beyond this point, there be dragons, by which I mean spoilers.
Yeah, we have a channel we watch on YouTube, and they'll talk about movies of the year, and often I'll go, okay, stop and now watch it.
Yep.
Then pick up on their chat.
We'll get into it in a second, but we just want to give people a little bit of runway and knowledge that this is there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this. You know, I don't usually give this for books because I feel like if you haven't read The Picture of Dorian Gray, it was written in 1890s. Like, you've had ample time to see it, but this is a new release, so maybe you just haven't seen it yet. You might not want to be spoiled. Yeah. But
we can't talk about it without spoiling it. It's not really...
Yes. I would say if you are up to date on your regular Blooms and Barnacles episodes, I don't know that there's anything in it that you wouldn't be aware of, because as the name would imply, Hamnet, it's loosely biographical sketch of the Shakespeare family and the death of their son Hamnet, which is in Ulysses. Presumably you've read that if you're on our Patreon. And Shakespeare using that, his grief over his son's death, to write Hamlet, which is also in Ulysses. So those plot beats are in the movie. Obviously the movie has its own take on that, so there might be specifics to that you don't want spoiled. So this is, I think, a really ample bit of hand-holding and warning. So, movie talk. So, we went to go see the movie Hamnet. We watch a lot of movies, Dermot and I. We love to talk about movies, which if you're an avid Patreon listener, you probably know, because we use all kinds of excuses to talk about an old movie. Which I really do. Actually, the movie episodes are some of my favorites. So, I had heard that Hamnet was coming out, and I thought that would be a really good episode. It's got a lot of kind of awards buzz around it right now, so which means that it's in theaters. Even we live in the middle of nowhere, so we were able to go see it in the movie theater, which our local is Mayo Movie World in Castlebar. So shout out to Mayo Movie World. If you're ever in Castlebar and you want to catch a movie, I just want to take a minute to talk about cinema as a cinema as a place that you go to watch a movie. Yeah. We saw Dune 2 when that came out, and we went to the Omniplex, which is like a chain of theaters in Ireland. And it was not a good experience. It was very impersonal. There were no people there. You had to pre-order snacks online. It was just like being in like a deserted movie theater. Yeah. And it bummed me out existentially, because my first job when I was 16 was an usher in a movie theater. I was like, wow, I can't believe that job has been automated. That's a bummer. Yeah. But Mayo Movie World is not a chain. It's just a one-off, and there were really nice people there who both sold us a ticket, and they'll sell you snacks and anything else you want, and it's a really nice little spot. So we do like them, and they showed Hamnet. So we went and saw it, had a little date night that we're now going to mine for content. Hamnet is based on a novel of the same name, I believe is from 2020, by author Maggie O'Farrell, and it is a fictionalized telling of the story of Shakespeare's family, told from the point of view of his wife. I think in the book he's maybe even less of a character, and I know in the book they never say his name, while in the movie there's a point where it's very lampshaded. Yeah. He is William Shakespeare, and it's about 3/4 of the way through the movie. We'll get to that. That's roughly what it's about, so it kind of unfolds from there. My plan was to just kind of run through the plot and give our thoughts on it as we go. Since we started planning this episode, Hamnet's won some Golden Globes. We'll talk about that a little at the end. Facts about the movie: it is made by a Chinese-American director, Chloe Zhao, and co-written with her and Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote the novel. Chloe Zhao, if you don't know her name, she also directed the Marvel film The Eternals, which the less said about that, the better. I know they won Best Best Picture, and I think she might have got director as well for Nomadland, which is a few years old now. That's maybe 3 or 4 years in the past. Another kind of prestige drama, Frances McDormand, it's about people, like older people work in Amazon warehouses, and I have some feelings about Nomadland as well. But Nomadland, I bring it up to say we'll get into it at some point. I think it was a Best Picture winner, and so this is kind of now what her next non-Marvel movie is Hamnet, and I think Hamnet will probably do very well at the Oscars, as it did at the Golden Globes. So it stars Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley as William Shakespeare and his wife. Now, they call her Agnes when you see it. We always call her Anne Hathaway when we talk about her because that was her name. A more detailed source on her life is my Germaine Greer book, Shakespeare's Wife. When you go see Hamnet, it opens with text on the screen that says in the Elizabethan period that Hamnet and Hamlet were interchangeable. They're basically the same name. Greer writes that Anne was actually a shortening of what we usually say Agnes, or sometimes pronounced Agnes, that she was listed as that name of Agnes in birth records, but is also called Anne, and that they're kind of used back and forth the same way, also kind of interchangeable names. And so I was curious why they chose to style her as Agnes. Why not call her Anne, which any other thing you read about the Shakespeares calls her Anne Hathaway, or Anne Shakespeare, because that was her name. And we looked it up, and it's because they didn't want it to be confused with the actor Anne Hathaway. So it's just for lack of confusion. And she's never called Hathaway in it. She's never called Shakespeare. She's just her first name, Agnes.
They could have called her Anne.
Yeah, they could have called her Anne. It might be different in the novel, which I will say I didn't read the novel for this. I just wanted to talk about the movie. But she's played by Jessie Buckley, who is also Irish. Paul Mescal's Irish. So both Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway are Irish actors, which I thought was interesting. I don't think there's anything meant by that. I don't think anyone was thinking it would be interesting to cast Irish actors as these famous English people, because I don't think that level of nuance or thought was ever considered while making this movie. I think that's just kind of turned out, and they're both very good in it. And then their 3 children were also kind of the other main characters, especially Hamnet, who was played by a young boy called Jacoby Jupe. I'm not sure that's how you say his name, but that's how it's spelled. Those are the main people. Do you have any thoughts so far? I'm talking a lot. Yeah. So the movie opens with a woman in a red dress in the woods with a big hawk, and she is espied by a young Latin tutor who's making 2 little boys repeat the same Latin phrase over and over and over again. Thus begins the wooing, so he kind of abandons his lesson and goes down. And how'd you feel about this opening scene?
Felt a bit weird.
Why did you feel weird about it?
She's sort of a witchy woman.
Yeah.
Who was doing the weirding ways.
Yes.
And he seems like a very bad Latin teacher. I think they all are sort of bad. Anyway, he's just getting the boys to do repeats, which is not great.
Yes, he has no passion for teaching because he's a great creative genius and he wants to be doing creative things. Yeah. Their meet cute is he kind of comes down and she's putting the hawk away and he kind of pins her up against the doorway and I don't know, it doesn't quite force himself on her, but like they kind of kiss.
It's
and
a bit bodice rippy.
It is a bit, yeah. And then there's some kind of like hard to get, but yeah, it progresses. Then eventually she does decide she likes him. They kind of hook up in the egg shed.
Yes.
They do it on a table that just has a bunch of like individual eggs set all over it. This was my first inkling. I was like, I don't know about this movie because those eggs are gonna go.
It's not hygienic.
She's sitting up on the table. There's eggs everywhere.
Yeah.
Loose. They're doing their thing, and the eggs aren't gonna stay on the table, Dermot. They're now in love. She gets pregnant. They announce to their families, and the families are very upset.
Begrudgingly have to let them get married.
Yeah, and they do at some point, I think between then, Shakespeare, well, the husband, whoever he might be, he's like, I'm going to go to London. I can get better work. I can't remember at what point he quite goes to London, but there's a lot of him like sitting up at night, writing by candlelight and writing like, oh, what light from yonder window broke? Oh, no. Like, I can't quite get this right. You know, and it's very obviously famous lines from Shakespeare. Yeah. His family doesn't approve of her because the rumor around town is that she's the daughter of a forest witch. And it is very heavily foregrounded that Agnes is magic. She denies it, but like the strong thrust of the movie is that she's, yes, like Dermot said, she's a very witchy woman. She's in touch with all the herbs and the animals, and there's like a big metaphorical hole in the forest, like a cave that the camera keeps like pushing into. And there's also a thread in this movie of, what if the Shakespeares were magical? What do you think, Dermot?
Look, that's... It's not an original idea. Like, Alan Moore's been talking about that forever.
If Shakespeare was magic?
No, about art being magic.
Oh, okay.
Like language is spells, right? Like you spell. An enchantment is from cantare to sing. A grimoire is grammar. The actual language of magic, it correlates with the language of art and poetry.